Okay, well, hi everybody. So good to be with you. I understand I've got about 10 to 15 minutes, right, Donna? And on the subject of the divine plan, Ronald Reagan and John Paul II, and how they took on communism, socialism, and what was really, I think, the big battle of the last 100 years, the battle of the 20th century. And I'll give you all 6 dates. And I just came out of the classroom, so I hope you all have pencils ready and notepads and start taking notes. There's going to be a quiz. All right. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so date number one, October 1917. All right, date number two, March 30th, 1981, Washington, D.C. Date three, May 13th, 1981, this is at the Vatican. Date four, June 1982, at the Vatican. Date five, November 1989, the Berlin Wall. And date six, Christmas Day, December 25th, 1991. So I'll start with the first of these, October 1917. That's when the Bolshevik Revolution broke out in Russia. Russia, which had been one of the most religious countries in all of Europe. I mean, dating back to Tsars and Tsar Alexander, the Congress of Vienna, calling it the Holy Alliance 100 years earlier. And then in 1917, the communists under Vladimir Lenin, Leon Trotsky, Joseph Stalin, by the way, they were originally the Social Democratic Party of Russia. They considered themselves Social Democrats before they took on the name Bolshevik, which they did in 1903. This is a major conference in London, Brussels, when the majority of the Russian Social Democrats split with the minority, and you had the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks. But they hated religion, and in keeping with Karl Marx and Marx's revolution, Lenin said, "What is religion?" He said, "Religion is the opiate of the masses." He said, "Religion is a kind of spiritual booze." That's what Lenin called it. Lenin said, "All worship of a divinity is a necrophilia." Necrophilia. There is nothing more abominable than religion. Lenin agreed with Marx. Marx said that communism is opiate of the masses, and he also said that communism begins where atheism begins. So they launched a vicious war on religion. Mikhail Gorbachev would refer to it as that. Gorbachev didn't endorse that. He sought to reverse it. But he said, my predecessors pursued an all-out wholesale war on religion. He said there's no justification for what they did. It was terrible what they did, but that's what they did. They jailed priests, nuns, bishops, Russian Orthodox Church, Roman Catholic Church, and Protestant denominations, literally anybody that they could get their hand on. When they shut down churches, they blew them up, turned them into atheistic museums, warehouses, workers' shops, metal shops, wood shops. I mean, anything they could to convert them into non-religious purposes. On the eve of the revolution in Moscow, there were 657 churches operating in Moscow, an unbelievable number. By the 1980s, according to official Soviet statistics, it was down to 46. And most of those were under full-time surveillance by KGB church watchers and were compromised. They had been fully penetrated by the Soviet religion department, church department. So fast forwarding ahead, it was this Soviet atheism that really appalled Ronald Reagan and John Paul II. John Paul II was named the chair of St. Peter, was declared Pope by the conclave in October 1978. It's amazing, the first non-Italian Pope in 455 years. First Slavic Pope ever, and the first ever from Poland, right smack in the middle of the Soviet Communist bloc. Ronald Reagan, who at that point had pursued a Republican nomination for the presidency 2 years earlier, didn't get it, began drove for it. Reagan, who of course is not Catholic, Protestant, he saw that as part of what he would call the DP. They actually called it the DP, the Divine Plan. I knew his closest aide, Bill Clark, really well. Ronald Reagan spoke of this divine plan often. He used the acronym, the DD. So Reagan was super impressed by that. He said, this is a game changer in the end of the Cold War. He said, this is a chance right here and now to take down Soviet communism. This is the key. We told one of his aides, he said, that's it. The Pope is the key, the Pope is the key, the Pope is the key. This was Dick Allen, his aide. He said, Dick, we need to find a way to get elected, and we need to reach out to this new Polish Pope, the Vatican, and make them an ally. So Ronald Reagan got elected November 1980, won 44 out of 50 states against Jimmy Carter, won the popular vote 51% to 41%, took the Electoral College 489 to 49. He was sworn in January 1981, and he again started looking for ways to meet with this new Polish Pope. Well, that was heavily derailed by two events. Here's the next 2 days. March 30th, 1981, Ronald Reagan is walking out of Washington Hilton in D.C. after speaking to the AFL-CIO about 2:25 p.m. And standing in wait out there for him was John Hinckley. And John Hinckley fired several shots. One of them hit Ronald Reagan, came very close to hitting the main aortal valve by Reagan's heart, missed it by a few centimeters. And Reagan could very easily bled to death. He required massive blood transfusion. And after a snap decision by his driver to take him straight to George Washington University Hospital, he probably would have bled to death. Now, a few weeks after that, I'm keeping an eye on my clock so I don't go too long. I could add a lot of other details on this. But 2 weeks after that, only 6 weeks, May 13th, 1981, John Paul II is riding through the Vatican, white Fiat Pope Mobile, as it's called, and waiting there in the crowd is a Muslim Turk named Mahmet Ali Asha, who's concealing under his jacket a 9mm Browning, pulled it out as John Paul II got closer and closer, lifted it up, fired a gun, and twice hit John Paul II, once in the hand and once in the abdomen where he barely missed the main abdominal artery. So think about this. Ronald Reagan and John Paul II, a lot of people watching me now remember that these two were both shot. But what they probably forget that it was only 6 weeks apart. John Paul II was rushed to the hospital, Gemelli Hospital, could have and probably should have bled to death, required immediate transfusion. The priest, his close aide, Stanislav Dziwisz, today is a cardinal in Poland, gave him the anointing of the sick, last rites, instead of carrying me up inside, but I had to do it. So they thought they could have lost him as well. They both survived, and they came together finally after Reagan wanting to meet with the Holy Father since 1978, but the two of them definitely wanting to meet since Reagan became president in 81. They finally met together at Vatican in June 1982, where they met together one-on-one alone in the Vatican Library for about 50 minutes, speaking English. John Paul II spoke, I think, 7 different languages. Reagan spoke only one. But they spoke English, and they said to one another that they believed that God had spared their lives for a special purpose, which they believed was to take on and defeat Soviet communism. And so imagine this president, non-Polish, non-Catholic, saying to this Polish, obviously Catholic Pope, saying to him, Holy Father, hope remains in Poland, in your country. We work together can keep it alive. So the two teams worked together in order to keep alive the solidarity movement in Poland, among so much more. I've written a 700-page book on this, 300,000 words, called A Pope and a President, which obviously has a lot more details than I'd give you in less than a minute. But they worked together very closely, the two teams. Reagan's team, led in particular by Bill Clark at the National Security Council, Bill Casey at the CIA, two Irish Catholics, We worked together very closely with John Paul II's team at the Vatican, especially the papal nuncio in Washington, Pio Laghi, and they worked to try to ensure that solidarity, that Poland could become the wedge to split the entire communist bloc from top to bottom. And that's exactly what happened. 7 years later, after these two met, this would have been June 1989, and which was also 10 years after the historic first trip to Poland by John Paul II and Karol Wojtyla when he became Pope. 9 days that changed the world, as the new Gingrich video truly was. In June 1989, Poland finally held the free and fair elections that Poland was supposed to have been assured way back at Yalta in 1945. And the communists lost every single seat, 100 out of 100, which is why communists don't hold elections. They would if they knew that they could win, but they don't. And it was that in June of 1989 that Mikhail Gorbachev said, when those free and fair elections were held in Poland, we knew that it was all over. We knew that the game was up. The Berlin Wall fell 4 months after that. But the elections in Poland that really precipitated or breached the Berlin Wall. Those elections in Poland were like a fuse that was lit that ran all the way to the Berlin Wall and eventually blew it up, helped blew it up. And Reagan and John Paul II saw that as the work of divine providence. They also saw the fact that Mikhail Gorbachev was in at the time as the hand of providence well. In fact, John Paul II would call him the providential man. And Ronald Reagan was blown away the first time that he met Gorbachev at Geneva in November 1985, again at Reykjavik in October 1986, because of the frequent references to God made by Mikhail Gorbachev, whose mother was secretly a deaconess in the Russian Orthodox Church, baptized him. His baptismal name is Mikhail, which means Michael, Saint Michael the Archangel, and that's who he's named for. Saint Michael Archangel, defend us in battle against the wickedness and snares of the devil. So Reagan and John Paul II saw Gorbachev, whether he knew it or not. Gorbachev himself, who's still alive, his religious views are cloudy and not real clear, but they saw him as to some degree an instrument of God. Well, the only thing left in the Cold War was the Soviet Union, the USSR, and Christmas Day, December 25th, 1991, Ronald Reagan's out of office at that point. George H.W. Bush is president. About a week later, December 17th, the flag, the hammer and sick red flag that had flown over the Kremlin for 7.5 decades was lowered. The flag of the Russian Federation went up. And for Mikhail Gorbachev, who at that point was president of the Soviet Union, in which every country but Russia that was in it, all 14, had declared independence over the last year or two, he called up George H.W. Bush on Christmas Day and he said, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas, and I want to let you know that I'm resigning. I'm resigning as head of the Soviet Union. And on that day, he basically resigned the USSR and the Cold War was over. So this awful place that had been responsible, communism killed over 100 million people in the 20th century, that declared a war on religion starting in 1917, the home of an anti-religious crusade by Lenin, inspired by Marx, that believed that religion was the opiate of the masses. It went out peacefully, quietly, without a shot fired on Christmas Day in West on December 25th, 1991. And that's something that Ronald Reagan and John Paul II saw as part of the divine plan, for sure. So I'm watching my clock, and Donna, I think that's 14 minutes on the dot. I'll stop it there. I take questions if you could, but I can't hear any of you. I do have my phone if that's necessary. But otherwise, I'll say bye and thank you. To quote Ronald Reagan, God bless America.